Hi there, my name is Caitlin Bandy and this is my channel Bandy's Books, and today we are here with our Aardvark January 2024 predictions. Oh my gosh, I said this before, but I can't believe that we're already almost to 2024. Like, we have a couple weeks left in this year. I feel like I blink and this year just goes by so rapidly. So the first Aardvark prediction of 2024, I'm pretty excited about it. And I have a ton of possible predictions. This month is super heavy for amazing books that are publishing. There are a ton that I feel like would fit with what Aardvark typically does. So let's not dally any further. Let's go ahead and get straight into them. We're going to be jumping into the historical fiction category first. First up, we have Picasso's Lovers by Jeanne Mackin. This currently has a 4.07 and about 15 ratings on Goodreads so far. Alana Olson always felt connected to Pablo Picasso. She is a recently graduated art historian and aspiring art writer in 1950s New York. Her late Spanish mother's fascination with Picasso is what inspired her doctoral thesis on his work. When she lands a dream job to write an artist profile on Pablo Picasso for her dream publication, it will open doors that she never imagined. So I've selected this book for Aardvark because I feel like this has kind of a quirky vibe. It's about an era in history that doesn't get a lot of attention but is actually really fascinating, and it's about an artist, which is grounds for a lot of really interesting topics to come up. I feel like in particular the fact that this is about Picasso's lovers and his art and all of that really fits with some of the vibe. After that, I selected You Dreamed of Empires by Alvaro Enrigue. This currently has a 3.92 and 182 ratings on Goodreads so far. Now, before we jump into this one, I will say that this is kind of a long shot pick. This was previously published, I think, in 2022 in Spanish, which is the author's native language. But the English translation is only going to be released in January 2024. So technically, it is a new publication in the US. This book is set in 1519 Tenochtitlan, which is the site that became modern-day Mexico City. Conquistador Hernan Cortés, accompanied by 9 captains, his troops, 2 translators, a friar, and a strategic former princess, enter Tenochtitlan to speak with Moctezuma. They are greeted by Princess Atochli with a ceremonial welcome meal. While they wait, one of Cortez's captains, Yasmin Caldera, begins to question the ease with which they were welcomed and wonder at the risk of getting out alive, let alone conquering the empire. So I've selected this book for Aardvark because I think this would be a fantastic selection for them for the historical fiction genre. It covers an era of history that is rich with topics to discuss. We have the conquistadors, we have Hernan Cortés, we have all of the people that he's brought with them, we have the Aztecs and what their motivations are, we have, this booming city that is like the heart of North America at the time. There's just so much that is fascinating to me about this particular book. I think that this could be a really fun pick, but again, admittedly, it is a very big long shot. Then we have River East, River West by Aube Lescure. This currently has a 4.43 and 37 ratings on Goodreads so far. This book is set in 2007 in Shanghai. When her American expat mother becomes engaged to their wealthy Chinese landlord, Lu Fang, Alva gets into the American school in Shanghai. Upon admission, she is surprised by the wealthy community of expats and the ever wilder thrills of a city where foreigners can act as they please. 1985 Qingdao, Lu Fang is a young married man and a lowly clerk in a shipping yard. He is one of the many casualties of harsh political reforms within his country. When China opens its doors to foreigners for the first time in decades, Lu Fang meets a foreign woman who will make him question everything. So I've selected this book for Aardvark because it is a debut novel. It covers a really interesting period of time in China. I also love that this book was described as kind of the reverse of the American dream. So instead of a character that leaves their country and immigrates to America and lives that out, we have a character that stays in their home country and learns to appreciate it. And the last of my historical fiction picks is All I See Is Violence by Angie, Elita, Newell. This currently has a 4.75 and 4 ratings on Goodreads so far. Cheyenne warrior Little Wolf fights to maintain her people's land and heritage as General Custer leads a devastating campaign against American Indians, killing anyone who refuses to relocate to the Red Cloud Agency in South Dakota. A century later, on that same reservation, Little Wolf's relation, Nancy Swift Fox, raises 4 boys with the help of her father-in-law while facing the economic and social ramifications of this violent legacy. So I've selected this for Aardvark because it is a debut novel. It is getting good ratings so far. It is about a really interesting time period, one that should be covered more, I feel like, by American historical fiction and isn't. I also feel like this one is, again, really rich for topics to discuss, and would make for a really, really interesting historical fiction pick. Now we're gonna go into thrillers, horror, and mystery. First up, we have a book called Rabbit Hole, and that's by Kate Brody. This currently has a 3.71 and 163 ratings on Goodreads so far. 10 years ago, Teddy's older sister Angie went missing. Her case remains unsolved. Now her father has killed himself. Unbeknownst to the family, Mark, her father, had become very active in a Reddit forum that was discussing Angie's disappearance. And Teddy then falls down the same rabbit hole. She becomes obsessed with Mickey, an amateur sleuth who is eerily keen on helping her solve the case. So I've selected this book for Aardvark because it is a debut novel and it's got the thriller vibes, but I like that it also explores like online life and like how you meet people online and you don't necessarily know them and the amount of trust that you give them as complete strangers. It sounds really interesting. I've been hearing some buzz about this one too, so I wouldn't be surprised to see this one show up at all. Then we have Northwoods by Aimee Pease. This currently has a 4.22 and 188 ratings on Goodreads so far. Eli North is not okay. His drinking is getting worse by the day. His emotional wounds from a deployment to Afghanistan are as raw as ever. His marriage is over, and the only job that he can get is at the local sheriff's office, which is run by his mother. When the body of a local teenage boy is found in the lake, it leads Eli on a case that is more than just a hunt for a killer. So I've selected this book for the Aardvark book box because it is a debut novel. It has those thriller vibes, but I feel like it's going to explore some deeper topics. We've got the post-traumatic stress. We have a guy that is drinking to self-medicate. There's a lot that makes this more than just like your standard thriller. And I feel like when Aardvark does pick a thriller, they like to pick ones that have a little bit more depth to them. Next up, we have the romance genre. That's Holiday Country by Inci Atrek. This currently has a 4.00 and a 48 ratings on Goodreads so far. Ada adores spending every summer in a Turkish seaside town with her mother and her grandmother. No matter how much she feels she belongs to the country, her connection to the culture feels as fleeting as the seasons. When Levent, a mysterious man from her mother's past, shows up in the town, Ada decides to play matchmaker, but then she must deal with her own intensifying attractions to Levent. So I've selected this for Aardvark because it is a debut novel and it is receiving pretty good hype so far. Everything that I've heard about this book has been pretty positive. And I think that this is interesting for a romance because it's not the typical like straightforward boy meets girl, everything goes okay, they have an argument or a misunderstanding and then they get back together. We have a much older man who is actually the love interest of our main character's mother, and we have our main character having these like kind of intense but almost inappropriate feelings towards this man. I think that this is definitely a little more interesting than the standard romance. I also love that it's set in Turkey. I can't wait to explore the Turkish seaside village that Ada is living in. And then from there, we're going to jump into contemporary and literary fiction. I have quite a few selections this month. First up is The Book of Fire by Christy Lefteri. This currently has a 3.91 and 827 ratings on Goodreads so far. Present day Greece, deep in a forest, lives Irene with her husband and her child. After a wildfire consumes their home and ruins their lives, Irene stumbles upon the body of the man who started the fire. In her anger, she makes a split-second decision that will come to haunt her. So I've selected this book for Aardvark because I know that Aardvark likes to feature under the radar releases. They pick authors that are popular where they have a release that's maybe not receiving as much attention as it deserves. And I feel like that's the case with Christy Lefteri. She is the author of The Beekeeper of Aleppo, which got really amazing feedback and was a really popular book. And for whatever reason, this book just doesn't seem to be receiving that much hype. I also think the cover of this book is gorgeous and it would make a great Aardvark edition. Then we have Swanna in Love by Jennifer Belle. This currently has a 4.00 and 19 ratings on Goodreads so far. Summer 1982, 14-year-old Swanna is the only person left at summer camp. 6 hours later, her mother finally shows up, stoned and radiant with her young Russian lover. Swanna and her younger brother are dragged to Vermont to an artist colony where kids are not welcome and they are forced to sleep in the back of a truck. Then Swanna meets Dennis, a handsome married father of two. She sets out to convince Dennis to help her, but love seldom obeys, and Swanna just might not be able to handle falling in love. So I've picked this book for Aardvark for a couple of reasons. This author, this is her first release in 10 years, and she's a pretty well-known author. Previously, her books have done fairly well, and so I could see this being considered like one of those under-the-radar releases. It's also about a subject that's very interesting. It could be kind of quirky and eccentric, also kind of deep, and for some reason, the cover of this book, even though it's not exactly the same, it kind of gives me the same vibes as the cover of Big Swiss, which was a previous Aardvark feature. So I feel like this kind of fits in line with some of the stuff that they've done before. Then we have Family by Laurie Frankel. This currently has a 4.44 and 133 ratings on Goodreads so far. India Allwood grew up wanting to be an actor. Armed with a stack of index cards, she goes from 16-year-old Broadway ingenue to TV superhero. Her new movie is a prestige picture about adoption, but it's the same old tired tragedy. As an adoptive mom in real life, India does the thing that you should never do and says publicly that the movie is bad. Soon, she and her children are at the center of a media storm. So I've selected this book for Aardvark for the same reason. This is what I would consider kind of an under-the-radar release. Laurie Frankel is a pretty well-known author, but I honestly hardly heard anything about this book until about a month ago, and now all of a sudden there's a little bit of a buzz, but definitely not what I would think of for a book by Laurie Frankel. So I could see this one fitting in with Aardvark's like under-the-radar category. Then we have Behind You is the Sea by Susan Muaddi Darraj. This currently has a 4.60 and 40 ratings on Goodreads so far. The Baladis, the Salames, and the Ammars are Palestinian immigrants who have all found a different welcome in America. The wealthy Ammar family employs young Maysoon Baladi, whose family struggles financially to clean up after their spoiled teenagers. Meanwhile, Marcus Salome, whose aunt married into the wealthy Ammar family, confronts his father in an effort to protect his youngest sister for dishonoring the family. Only a trip to Palestine can bridge the seemingly unbridgeable divide between two different generations. So I've selected this book for Aardvark because I think that this could be a really powerful and interesting book for them to pick. It is very timely with everything that's going on in the world right now, and it covers Palestinian immigrants in the United States and then what it means to go home to Palestine. I think that that could just thematically really relevant and interesting for Aardvark to pick. I also think that this is the highest rated book on this entire list, and so I could see that being another great reason to pick it. It sounds really interesting. I love that we have so many different families and like different generations. There's a lot going on. I feel like this would be just a really fantastic read. And then the last of my fiction picks is called Poor Dear by Claire Oshetsky. This currently has a 4.48 and 44 ratings on Goodreads so far. Margaret Murphy is a weaver of fantastic tales, growing up in a world where the truth is often too much for one little girl to endure. Her first memory is of the day her friend Agnes died. No one blames Margaret, not in so many words. Left alone to make sense of tragedy, Margaret wills herself to forget these unbearable memories, replacing them with stories full of faith and magic. Enter Poor Dear, a strange creature who winds her way uninvited into Margaret's stories, and will not stop until Margaret atones for her role in Agnes's death. So I've selected this book because this sounds so interesting. The cover of this is fascinating. The subject matter of this sounds like it could be really deep and really powerful. This is the author who wrote the book Chouette, which I feel like is fairly popular. So I feel like this could be another one of those under the radar type releases. And I feel like there's something about this cover that just really screams Aardvark to me. It's kind of quirky and eccentric, and just in general, like this whole book, it feels like a whole vibe for Aardvark. And finally, we're gonna go into fantasy and science fiction. I have 3 picks for this category. First up, we have Beautyland by Marie-Helene Bertino. This currently has a 4.65 and 35 ratings on Goodreads so far. At the moment when Voyager 1 is launched into space carrying its famous golden record, a baby of unusual perception is born to a single mother in Philadelphia. As a child, Adina Giorno recognizes that she is different. She also possesses knowledge of another planet. The arrival of a fax machine allows her to connect with her extraterrestrial relatives and report on human existence. So I've selected this book for Aardvark because this is a science fiction, but it's kind of quirky and interesting, maybe a little bit humorous. I feel like it kind of fits with Aardvark's previous science fiction vibe. Marie-Helene Bertino is also a relatively well-known author. Her previous book, Parakeet, did pretty well. I could see this fitting in really nicely with Aardvark's book box. Then we have The Parliament by Aimee Pokwatka. This has a 3.67 and 33 ratings on Goodreads so far. Madeline Purdy is stuck in her hometown library when tens of thousands of owls descend on the building, tearing apart anyone foolish enough to step outside. Mad is tasked with keeping her students safe while they seek a solution to her dilemma. So I selected this book as a potential pick because I feel like this is really quirky and interesting as well. We have a group of people that are literally trapped in the library by thousands upon thousands of ravenous owls. I feel like that is a super interesting topic for a book, and I'm really curious. I love the cover of this. I just feel like there's a lot with this book that could really fit with Aardvark's style. And my final selection is The Bullet Swallower by Elizabeth Gonzalez James. This currently has a 4.31 and 94 ratings on Goodreads so far. 1895. Antonio Sonoro is the latest in a long line of ruthless men. He's good with a gun and drawn to trouble, and he's also out of money and options. He leaves his wife and children in Dorado, Mexico, and sets off with his little brother Hugo to rob a train in Houston that's supposed to be full of gold. It ends in a shootout with Texas Rangers that kills little brother Hugo and sets Antonio on a course for revenge. 1964. Jaime Sonoro is Mexico's most renowned singer and actor. His life is disrupted by a book of family history where Jaime learns about a list of horrific crimes committed by his ancestors. Jaime realizes he might have to pay for these crimes unless he can discover the history of his grandfather, Bandido el Tragabalas. So first of all, if you don't speak Spanish, Bandido el Tragabalas is like the bandit that swallows bullets. And I've selected this one for Aardvark because this book sounds like so much fun. I am not typically somebody that really reacts to Westerns, but this one sounds like a blast. And I could totally see this being featured by Aardvark. It really screams Aardvark vibes. Out of all the books on this list, and there's a lot of really good ones, this is probably one of the ones that I am most excited about. So that being said, those are all of my selections for Aardvark's book subscription box for January 2024. I hope that you found them interesting. This was probably my favorite month so far predicting for Aardvark because there were just so many quirky and fun and interesting books coming out this month, so many of which I could absolutely see Aardvark featuring. If you liked the video, hit the thumbs up, comment down below, and let me know which of these books are you excited about? Which ones would you like to see Aardvark feature? Are there any other books that I didn't mention that you think that might be a possibility? Or any of these like just too out there and too crazy for Aardvark to feature? And if you're not already subscribed to this channel, you know what to do. Hit the subscribe button down below, as well as the notification bell so that you never miss a video. And that way we can see each other again soon. Thanks so much for joining. Bye.